Hello and welcome to the How to Thrive podcast. This podcast is hosted by me, Claire Sanders, and my sister and co-founder, Helen Silver-McMahon. Together, we are on a mission to empower individuals and teams with the human skills they need to thrive, maximising performance, minimising risk, and optimising well-being. If you'd like to find out more about how we can help your practice, please get in touch via our website, www.being-human.co.uk. I'd like to take a moment to say a huge thank you to our sponsors for the How to Thrive podcast, Flank. Flank is your in-house legal team's first AI colleague. Flank introduces AI native agents who are designed to integrate seamlessly into your existing systems, empowering legal teams like yours to work smarter. They instantly resolve commercial team requests, eliminate bottlenecks, and enable your legal team to operate at the speed the business needs. But this is just the beginning. At Flank, they firmly believe that the future isn't simply about better software. It's about building towards a future where fully autonomous AI colleagues will own entire workflows end to end, deeply embedded into your tools and systems. This is the new generation agentic engine that's redefining what's possible for in-house legal. If you'd like to find out more about Flank, have a look at getflank.ai. And if you get in touch with them, please do mention How to Thrive, so that they know that it came from one of our wonderful listeners. Listening's everywhere. I've realised that listening is a really important part of everything we talk about.
It's a key skill, isn't it? It's really a key skill.
Morning, Helen. How are you doing?
You always ask me that. I've discovered listening back to several of the podcasts that I'm either fine, okay, or yeah, I'm great.
Well, let's again. How are you really? Take a moment, take a breath.
I have hay fever. It's sad.
Oh.
I feel a bit like snuffly and I have a sore nose. And now everybody wishes that I just said I was fine.
No, they don't. No, they don't. Everyone's intrigued. Oh,
Are
dear.
they? I'm
Have you always had hay fever? I feel like I'm learning something here about you.
I think it's getting worse.
Have you always had hay fever?
No, I don't think I did, but it's become worse over the last few years. Now really sensitive to tree pollen and stuff like that. Feels like I have sinusitis, which is very boring. I don't have time. We were kind of brought up on this whole thing of not having time for being
don't
ill.
Have time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And equally, I would probably put that out there. Listen to your body, Helen. Listen to your body. So, listeners, we come to today's podcast, and we thought, do you know what? We typically have a guest, and we thought, well, it's nearly Easter. It's sunny. It's the school holidays. What would be delightful? I know. Let's have a natter. We haven't jumped on and just had a session, an episode where we just talk amongst ourselves. So we thought we would do that, which feels very self-indulgent. But there we go. We thought we'd just have a bit of a natter, bit of a wiffle waffle, have a bit of a recap on kind of some of our thinking. And one of the topics I think that we've been talking about a lot recently between ourselves, but also I feel like I've had a lot of different conversations about this in many respects, is listening.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought we could spend some time thinking and talking about listening.
I thought you
talk about thinking and talking about listening. That feels a bit weird, doesn't it? Maybe we could spend some time listening.
Yeah, but that might make a really rubbish podcast because if we're just listening, there'll be no talking, and then that kind of negates the point of it, right?
We could do a podcast where everyone spends 40 minutes listening to themselves and what's going on around them. That would probably be actually very, very powerful.
It would. I think it's really interesting, isn't it? I was listening to a podcast the other day and it was somebody being interviewed that I know quite well professionally. And I was really struck by the fact that I learned things that I had never known about this person. And you just think, have I been asking the wrong questions or not listening? But I found it intriguing that even when you feel like you know people, unless you really adopt that mindset of listening to them and asking curious questions, then you probably are not really aware of half of their superpowers, really,
And also it's about time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes we're asking the question that we want the answer to in that moment, or we think we want the answer to, but it feels quite luxurious to invest the time to go broader than what you actually need the answer to.
Yeah.
But actually, I think that is where the power is. It's those open-ended questions and finding out more and making that time and making that space. I suppose that's the thing about listening, isn't it? Listening is so much broader than actually just physically using your ears. I think
Yeah,
that's the thing.
definitely. And I'm kind of thinking of people that I've known over the course of my life and who I've come into contact with that were really good listeners and asked really good questions. And actually, I think it might be linked to generational attributes of having more time, actually spending time connecting with people and sort of not being so distracted by things. I think that kind of ability to sit and, have a cup of tea with somebody and chat to them, and for it not to be time pressured, really reveals some lovely, lovely listening and lovely nuggets,
Yeah, I'm quite nervous about my listening capabilities. I'm really aware of it. Like, I'm not entirely sure I'm a very good listener. Because when we talk about listening and we talk about when you're listening to understand and listening to respond, I try really hard to listen to understand. Like, I'm really aware of it. But then sometimes I know that I'm listening to respond and trying to kind of flip. And then I start telling myself, stop listening to respond, Claire, listen to understand. But then I'm not listening to understand either because I'm busy having a dialogue internally.
Then you're listening to
It's
yourself.
quite hard. It's quite a hard thing to master. Or, for example, when I'm not a coach and I don't do coaching. I might do a bit of mentoring, but I don't do coaching. But when I'm having a conversation with someone, I'm always trying to help them find their own internal solution, which I guess is a bit more kind of coaching style. But all the time I'm listening to them and helping them, inside my head is going, don't say anything, Claire. Listen, you're listening. Don't say anything. Don't say anything because you're listening. No, that is interesting, but don't say anything. I suppose it's a bit like meditation. I'm now thinking about the meditation I've done with Manu, where it's a bit like, accept the thought, let it go. But do you ever find that? Do you ever find that you're so busy trying to listen that actually you're not listening at all?
Do you think it's a practice? Do you think it's quite something that you have to get used to doing? I suppose it's difficult to silence your internal thoughts, and I guess that's part of reasoning, isn't it? If you're gathering information, then we know that cognitively we're gathering information, understanding that information, so that we can then move towards decision making, I guess, and that comes into deciding what we would then say in response or what have you. So maybe it's kind of working against the grain of actually how our brains are trying to work. They're trying to go through this pattern of problem solving.
I also do think that it is, if I dig deep, I feel sometimes that people are expecting you to have an answer. Maybe it comes to this feeling about vulnerability and asking for time to think and saying, I don't know, and all these things that actually, if we allowed ourselves to listen, really just listen, and then gave ourselves the space and the time to process it before responding, would that help the practice? Rather than feeling, I've got a 30-minute window for this call. In that 30 minutes, I've got to understand what you need from me. I've got to respond, find a solution and help you, all of those things together. Or maybe it's the sales calling, right, I've got to find your need and now I've got to explain how we can help. It's always so time pressured. And maybe that does go back to what you were saying, that actually when you think about the great listeners, they're people who just felt like maybe they had more time, or maybe that was just the illusion they gave you. But maybe that's also about being, thinking again, just thinking about meeting prep. Maybe it is about also dedicating some time before you have a meeting to real meeting prep, so that you can be really, you give yourself space and time to listen, and because you're not waffling on about stuff that actually isn't part of what you need.
I think it is interesting, but I think also setting it up when you're having a meeting to say to somebody, I might not have all of the answers right now. Do you know what I mean? I might need to go away and think about this, and almost giving yourself permission for that before you begin, because I think that we are so wired for immediate returns. It's quite likely that, if we're on the end of that call and we're speaking to somebody, we are hoping that they can do this in a one and done. Do you know what I mean? We want them to give us a solution or, wrap it up. So it's helpful, where sometimes it's much better if we gather the information and then go away and quietly process it, because when we're deciding what to reply, I guess we're deciding either from the perspective of automatic decision making, which relies on patterns that we've used before, or we're having to use sort of type 2 decision making, which is a lot slower, a lot more methodical. Maybe we haven't got a pattern. Maybe we're going to have to create something. Or we may even have to go even further into creative decision making, where we might have to use a huge amount of time to solve the problem, and it might be impossible to ensure it. But I guess, again, we're probably more likely to try and find a pattern that we've used before. So, when you ask a question or when you listen to something, we're kind of going, oh, I've heard this before, therefore the answer is X, Y, Z, rather than taking a step back and going, forget everything that I've known before. Let's just listen. And then I guess that's the thing is do we even need to be doing that? And I think it comes back to, sometimes as leaders, you have to be prepared to say to people, what would you like from this conversation? Do you want me to just listen, or do you want me to think of solutions, or what's the ask? Because it might be that, we always have that thing when you get home from work or what have you, and you having a good old rant and you're telling your other half all about it. And actually the last thing we want them to do is come up with any kind of solutions. That's just irritating, right? What we want is them to just listen with no judgment, just hold the space, listen, say yes or no, or nod in the right places to indicate they are still listening and they haven't fallen asleep. And that's what we need, right?
But then does that also then come back into the communication? It's about the limit. It is about the listening, but it's also about the communication. I mean, you just telling me that or saying that reminds me that. So I do a little bit of shuffling. I think running is probably a bit over exit. I shuffle a bit, and I've been doing it more and more, and I'm getting a little bit faster. Not much faster, but a little bit faster. But I keep saying to my husband, I come back and full of endorphins. I'm like, oh, I did like a sub-6 pace for the, for 5K or something. And my husband's like, that's brilliant. So what have you done in that? And what can you do to take it forward? And I'm like, no. I'm just on a 6-6 pace. I just need that at this point in time. I just need you to be like, yay, that's amazing, and that's it. But maybe I'm not communicating that need because I only come in with the whole, look what I've done. I'm so proud of myself for going a bit faster. So it's about communicating actually the need. I have now said to him, I don't want to run. I'm not doing it to run faster. I'm doing it basically just to give myself the headspace, and actually it feels like a real achievement.
And to be able to eat these eggs.
And to be able to eat these shows. To all those marathon runners out there, can I give a shout out to Maddie, who is one of our listeners, who is phenomenal. Love Maddie, and she sends me the most gorgeous voice notes when she's listening. She sent me a voice note on Saturday doing her long run for the London Marathon. Good luck, Maddie. And she was like, I'm really sorry. This is kind of how she was talking. I'm really sorry. I'm doing my long run for the marathon, but I just wanted to drop your voice note about your latest podcast episode. I'm not sure I would have known she was running the marathon running at the same time. Whereas when I'm running, I'm like,
yeah, exactly. I think one of my key metrics when I was running, and I now run very, very infrequently. I'm not really supposed to run because I've got a false hip, and it shaves hours and days of its life if I abuse it.
If you use it, you mean if you run on it? Not if you...
yeah. Oh no, I can use it. Yeah, but I mustn't really run. Anyway, one of my main goals for running is not to alarm people by my breathing, because I think sometimes
you come up behind them
when I've got my AirPods in and I'm running, and I've got obviously going to have some pretty pacey dance music or something to motivate me. And then obviously I can't hear my breathing, and then I become really concerned that I'm like running along and I probably sound like, I don't know, an aged buffalo or something, and scaring people. And hear this person approaching and they just think, oh my God, and I have no concept of it. But I did kind of drop myself in it a little while ago, because then I decided the answer to this was actually just to hold my breath when I was passing people, which just backfired because I got a little way past people and I was just like, oh.
Holding your breath.
Yeah, because I didn't want anybody to be critiquing my breathing. It's just overthinking in extreme. So running dangerous for all sorts of reasons.
I think you're actually doing people a service, because they know that you're coming. You're like a little like a beeper. When things are reversing, this vehicle is reversing. For your breathing, it's like, Helen is coming.
Yeah. So I was always amused by the fact that, when I was younger, I used to go running with friends and what have you. And my measure of success then was how much chatting I could do whilst running. And I used to find it quite frustrating when the running got in the way of the chatting.
So I think so I run with somebody, and actually maybe running is a really, I've now had this realization that maybe I listen best when I'm running, because I can't really think of anything else. And I run with someone locally from me, and she is fitter than me, and we live in quite a hilly area. And so what tends to happen is that I ask her a question at the bottom of a hill, and then she answers it. But it has to be a wide enough question to get us quite a long way, because I can't possibly be asking another question in short succession. And then I get a bit further up the hill and I'll ask her another one. So actually, she does all the talking, I just plant the questions. But actually, I probably do listen really well in that situation, because my other senses are preoccupied. Like I can't listen to respond, because I know that I'm not going to respond. I can only listen to understand.
So that's really interesting, because I think that distraction comes into it quite a bit, doesn't it? When we have those pipe cleaners, we use little pipe cleaners at some of our sessions, don't we, for people to fiddle with, so that their fingers are busy, so they're not tempted to play with their phones.
Addition, but goes down really well. But sorry, carry on.
Yeah, we've had kind of a competition situation in some of the sessions, haven't we, of what you can create with the pipe cleaners, which actually maybe that's too much distraction, but it's quite good for people to be able to be fiddling with their fingers without having their phone and playing with that. Maybe it is about having a distraction from the internal dialogue, or kind of those kind of things.
Well, you just put everybody on treadmills. Maybe that's the way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't catch me talking much. I would be breathing like a buffalo.
Listening.
Well, that seems harsh for buffaloes. I'm not sure what buffaloes breathe like. Might be less.
It's funny, because I was talking to someone just before we recorded, and they were saying to me that they were keen to do some negotiation training. And I was like, oh, brilliant. What sort of thing? And she was like, well, I don't really think it's kind of the strategy piece. It's more about the other stuff. And actually, it makes you I then was reminded about the brilliant Nigel Taberner, who will be our next guest on our next podcast, which will be aired in a couple of weeks. And he does talk obviously a lot about listening, but actually how listening is really the core of his superpower as a hostage negotiator. It's almost not about clearly there is an element of strategy, but actually I think it's more about taking the time to listen rather than what you say. Maybe was quite interesting, that, because it made me think. And maybe also about like how you physically, because I've been reading a bit about motivation and how to influence people, and a lot of that is also about listening. It's also about the space and helping people to come to their own decisions, which becomes about listening to yourself, right? If you're reaching your own decision, it's about listening to yourself, potentially. Listening's everywhere. I've realised that listening is a really important part of everything we talk about. It's a key skill,
isn't it? It's really a key skill, because you can't empathise unless you listen to understand. No. And you can't be compassionate, really, I guess. But I guess you could observe something visually.
But then is observing listening?
No. How? What part? What?
Because you're listening to a situation, but you're observing through your eyes.
So I wouldn't say that was listening. I would say that was observing. Sort of comes into the bounds of gathering information, doesn't it?
It's true. I'm just wondering whether like the broader... Helen's looking perplexed now. But it kind of goes from what we were saying, I'm reminded about Ed's podcast where he was saying that basically listening or empathy is the superpower, basically. It's the core of everything. And empathy is ultimately listening, right?
Yeah.
That's like listening without judgment. There you go. So what else have you been up to, Helen? We've done, what have you been? Where have you been? Where have you been?
Well, I was in Glasgow last week, which was quite fun, at the University of Glasgow, at the veterinary school there, which has such a beautiful campus. They have like a little stream running through it and lots of green areas and stuff like that. And it's just, we were talking to the nurses about resilience and leading resilience and leadership techniques. And I guess that comes down to communication and compassionate leadership, which brings us back round to listening, really, doesn't it? But I was really struck by the fact that I haven't spent enough of my life in Scotland. I need to do some sort of grand tour of Scotland, I feel, at some point, because it's such a beautiful place. I also flew over the Lake District, and it was a really sunny, clear day.
Did you?
And yeah,
Ooh.
and you can see, I mean, this is not rocket science, right? But I used to be quite frightened of flying, and so I never used to look out the window because I found it quite frightening when the plane turned or what have you, and then I'd feel like I was like being tipped, kind of thing. It sounds a little bit silly, but now I know more about human factors. I know I've done more flying. I don't feel so scared. I actually really enjoy looking out the window at what we're going over. Yeah, we flew over the Lake District, and it was just amazing. The different landscapes.
Could you see a lot of the differential? Could you see the landscape distinguished? So the lakes and the mountains and
yeah, exactly. So you could really tell, and you could see quite a clearly delineated patch of, that was the Lake District, or is the Lake District, and the mountains and the lakes in between, and then and I was actually thinking, if a lot of, you could see also a lot of the settlements or a lot of the houses around the lakes, and obviously there's not that many houses on top of the mountains and stuff like that, but I found it really intriguing. It really passed the time for me and I could see all the way out to the sea and what have you. So that was quite nice.
That's my happy place. I love the Lake District. Never happier than when I've got my walking boots on and I'm traipsing up a mountain.
And I think that on the theme of listening, something that I've noticed recently is when I'm working with people who have accents, I use up a lot more of my brain power when I'm working, because I'm really listening really intently to what they're saying, because perhaps their accent, I have to work harder to translate it. And certainly when I was in Abu Dhabi recently, we were in meetings and I was the only person in that room from the UK. And so I was listening to a lot of people who were speaking English. Thank goodness that other people are so good at speaking English, but with accents. And I realised how much workload my brain was doing with that as well. I found it really interesting. I was really tired at the end of each day because I was having to kind of almost sort of really listen carefully to understand exactly what was being said. So I find that all fascinating, how our little brains work.
I'm trying to think what I've been doing that's exciting. While you were saying that, wasn't listening, but too busy trying to think of myself. There it goes again. Well, tomorrow, what are we doing tomorrow? Tomorrow we're going to talk to the beautiful flex trainees. In London. So that will be a lovely, lovely day out. It feels like a special, special day because it is the Easter holidays and I'm getting a whole day in London. Helen and I are meeting nice and early to talk about strategy over brunch. And then going to work with the flex trainees, which will be lovely.
Oh, I tell you the other thing I've been doing. I've been so my daughter turned 17, as you know, last Saturday. So I took her out for a driving lesson. That was an experience.
I haven't heard about this.
Well, actually, it wasn't too bad. I mean, Beth is quite a determined young lady who, never knowingly wrong, doesn't always listen to the best of her abilities, and she
doesn't sound familiar at all.
So she's really keen to learn to drive because we live in a village, and obviously it would help her, get about the place. So I had said that I would insure her on my car, which is a little bit scary on its own, apart from the phenomenal cost involved in these things. But I don't want to assume that she's going to bump my car, but I really also don't want her to do that. So I'm trying to kind of be a little bit cool, breezy about it, whilst also feeling quite anxious. And so we found a really quiet place on an industrial estate for her to have her first try at driving. She did really, really well. She listened really carefully. She's a bit of closed loop communication, so she'd repeat back to me what I was saying. And my son was sat in the back videoing.
What? You took Ethan as well?
I know. Ethan wanted to come. And he was like, I want to video this because it'd be really funny. I was like, don't. He's like, I've got a whole new level of respect for you now. And Beth was like, for me? And he was like, no, for mum, who my kids are also in a really annoying phase of calling me mother. And I'm just so yeah, but we did that, and it was she did really, really well. And then she had her first proper driving lesson on Tuesday, so that's fine. And she did say to me, can we go out again? But I haven't yet plucked the courage for that.
So how did you find kind of explaining to her how to drive? Because if someone said to me, right, how do I drive? It feels like such a natural thing because we've been doing it for so long. Like with a gear car, I mean, with an automatic, I think it's, or a manual, sorry, not a gear car, a manual rather than an automatic. You know, that kind of like you've got to lift your foot on the clutch to bite. Is it biting point? And
Yeah.
then you have to be so, like, you actually have to consciously get in the space of how do I actually drive?
Yeah. So that was really interesting. It really, like, I had to really pause and think about, right, really take it from the beginning, like step by step, where do we start? Like, how do you turn the car on? What do we need to make sure that we've done before then? Is it in neutral? Is the handbrake on? Have I got my foot on the brake? Have I got my foot on the clutch? And then but it's quite complex because you don't realize all the things that you're doing whilst you're driving because you're looking around, you're indicating, you're doing that, finding the biting point to pull away. You're then changing gear. Again, you're probably signaling, checking your mirrors, maneuvering, all this sort of stuff that we really do take for granted. So I had to be really conscious of how I was communicating it because I wanted to be really clear in how I was communicating it. But equally, the pace of it moves so fast in your head because you're just doing it. It's really easy to miss out some steps and then realise that actually you haven't explained a bit that's really fundamental that, she needs to understand. And I guess it's also that fear is that I think, we were talking about the Dunning-Kruger effect of kind of not really understanding the kind of the elements that could be like threat response inducing. So, we were going along a road and there was a big lorry that had come out of the industrial park behind us, and suddenly she saw that in the mirror and she said, "Oh my God, there's a lorry behind me. Oh, I've got to get off the road. I've got to get off the road." And I was like, no, you haven't. Yeah, you haven't, right? I was just like, just calm down. And it's really like hard because then you're like, okay, well, how would I feel if that was me? And I'd probably feel the same thing. And it's definitely learning curve for me as well. I'm very much looking forward to her having had a few more lessons and being able to just do it, right? Because she will get there very quickly. But I was looking at that Dunning-Kruger effect thing, and it just cracks me up because that, the whole thing about Mount Stupid and then the Valley of Despair and then the slope of
So for listeners, so Diane Kruger.
Dunning-Kruger.
Diane Kruger. I think Diane Kruger is a whole other person. It's all about kind of the steps of learning, isn't it? And basically going through the fact that you are unconsciously. Oh, what the steps? Remind me.
Unconsciously incompetent. So you don't know what you don't know, and then you're consciously incompetent.
You do know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Consciously competent, so but you're actually really having to think about it, and then you are unconsciously competent.
That's it.
Is that the right word?
Yeah, exactly.
So it is exactly like the driving thing, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of go through. Beth started off with like, I'm going to be able to nail this. Then she got in a car and was like, actually, I don't know how to do this. This is so hard. And then you become like, you can drive, but you have to think about it so much and it feels really artificial. And then you become seasoned and you become that whole like, well, I'm doing it without thinking about it. Yeah. I guess that's the thing. But that stage of, and we have this with our Thriving Teams program. And this is really where it came up, isn't it? Because we were talking about, everyone was saying, God, like this feels really hard, or this feels really like I'm having to be really conscious about it and really think about it, and it might feel a bit unnatural. And you're like, well, that's brilliant because now you've reached that, consciously incompetent, which carries with it sounds a bit, that sounds a bit judgy, but actually you have to get to that bit of not knowing what you don't know in order to, or knowing what you don't know, and to start unraveling it and then starting to build different practices or new practices. So brilliant example of that, really.
Exactly. And I think that's the same with a lot of practical skills. I certainly can see, when veterinary nurses or vets start their practical journey, they're out of university, they've learnt the theory of things. It might be that they feel that they could do stuff and it wouldn't be a problem, and sometimes that's really dangerous, right? It's like it's really dangerous for people to try to do more than's possible and to understand their boundaries so that they can remain safe. And then I guess it comes back to listening and when you're observing people, when you're leading people, being able to observe their competence and help apply the leadership principals at the right stages of competence as well, or whether they need a coaching or directing style, all of those kind of things that we talked about as well.
And I suppose it's like a continuous loop as well, isn't it? Because you want to be continuously learning, really. Like you don't, I mean, because I guess if we then think about the quadrant about high performance, and when you think about one side psychological safety and the other side like motivation and accountability, for you to be in that top right quadrant of kind of the learning zone, you kind of need to have that level of pushing yourself almost. So if we're always in that consciously competent, driving without thinking about it, then we are really cruising. We need to be consciously, almost like that consciously incompetent or consciously competent, to really be thinking about it and really be thinking about how we can improve ourselves and how we can improve processes. Because I guess when you're in that top unconsciously competent, you're constantly thinking, that's where this is how it's always been done stage, I suppose, because you don't have that level of, you're not unsettled enough to think, is there a way that I could be doing this better? Yeah. And I think it's probably the most comfortable place to be, that top, but actually not as dynamic and not as impactful.
It's all very interesting. Applying these things to real life is always, I really love that about human factors, is that it can impact not just work stuff, but home stuff as well. It kind of weaves throughout your life as different experiences and things like that.
Well, I think that's it. And sometimes, but then does that not come down to the fact as well that actually we talk about this work-life balance, which I don't really buy into. I think work is life, and so if we're always waiting for this moment when work finishes and life begins, well, then we're not really living. So I kind of think it's about finding this space where the two coexist, and that's why it's so important that you're teaching skills that benefit individuals professionally, but also personally, because you need to be living them throughout your whole being, really, rather than reserving them, because then it becomes almost artificial. It needs to be that you are, living these skills and these practices, not just reserving them from 9 till 5 if they are the hours that you work. So yeah, they have to be adaptable. They have to be practices that people can put into place consciously, for sure. So that's listening. Done.
That's listening. That's enough listening for today.
What's the whole time? I also have to say that my kids are downstairs, and through this whole thing, I've been slightly one ear on, like, will they be storming up the stairs any minute? But they seem to have done all right. God knows what that means for the.
I was going to say, that's like
what's going on down there.
Yeah, I
How
find
many snacks have been eaten.
Yeah, the snack cupboard is now empty, and yeah, good luck. Good luck. That's all I gotta say.
Oh my goodness me. Deep, very deep. Right. Well, we'll leave our lovely listeners. That was Helen and I waffling about listening.
Yeah.
And some thoughts about listening. I'm gonna go and try I would like to get better at being more consciously competent and unconsciously competent at listening. That's what I'm going to strive to be. I think I probably need to practice more.
Okay.
Yes. Maybe need to run more and that, or
run everywhere.
No.
It'll be like little Forrest Gump. Okay, well, I will strive to keep you accountable to that.
Oh no, I'm scared. You're going to be like, are you listening?
Are you listening? Yeah.
Are you listening? Yeah.
You're not listening. That's it.
Yeah. But then equally, going back to this distraction thing, I was just thinking that I do listen quite well when I'm in the car, when I'm driving. If I listen to a podcast or something. Yeah. I think there is something in this distraction point. I'm sure there'll be some literature on it as well.
Probably also presence is really important, isn't it? How can you make sure you're present to listen? Locking the old phone away as well. I love it when you say to somebody, "Oh, are you listening?" and they're on their phone and you're like, "You're not listening. You're not listening to me at all.
My
Go on.
daughter's very good at this. My daughter says, Mummy, will you stop saying because she knows. I think
that's
she's realised that when
code.
I'm like, I'm not listening.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just agreeing.
So maybe you could ask Millie to keep you accountable to listening as well.
Oh, should love that. No, but actually, maybe we could do this as a family accountability session, because I'm not entirely sure that, how many times a day as a parent do you say, you're not listening to me? I think it could be, but Mummy, you're not communicating effectively. No, I'm probably not.
Oh yeah, but you need to be careful, because I've created a child that keeps me accountable to my principles, and it's quite exhausting sometimes.
It's really annoying. I thought you were going to say it's really annoying.
It really is annoying as well. Yeah. That's But what can I say? You can teach children, but sometimes it's do as I say and not as I do.
Yeah, exactly. Right then, I'm going to sign off now.
Toodaloo.
I'll see you tomorrow, actually, bright and early in London. But
I know.
We won't see our lovely listeners tomorrow. Well, some of them maybe.
Apparently it's going to be 21 degrees. So
Ooh.
Breaking out the summer uniform, I think.
Oh, how exciting. Can't wait. I'll start thinking about that right now. But I feel like we should probably just shout out to people that we are holding a in-person event on the 29th of April for lawyers, which actually is about setting sustainable boundaries. So that's 29th of April in London. If people want to come, you can sign up at being-human.co.uk. Helen, when can people see you next? When are you launching your next Civility in Action session?
Oh, so that's going to be at the end of April, that starts. So, if you would like a ticket for that, you can get one of those as well on beinghuman.co.uk.
Being-human.co.uk.
Being-human, yeah. And
we weren't quick enough off the mark to get Being Human. We're at VMG, Veterinary Management Conference. You're coming as well. So I'm coming to that too.
Yeah, so that's looking really good. Some really good speakers there. I'm speaking about inclusive leadership and nonviolent communication. So that will be cool. Looking forward to meeting everybody there. And then we've got How to Thrive in September. So
September for the vets, October for the lawyers. I haven't started talking about the lawyer one, but the vets can already buy their tickets.
Yeah, super early bird tickets are on sale for the most the most loyal of followers. So get in there quickly.
Oh. Yeah. And the theme this year, by some magical thing that you know what? I would love to say that this was totally and utterly orchestrated to lead to this moment, but we are not that organised. The theme for this year's How to Thrive is, drum roll, listening. Oh dear. If we were better organised, we could have actually tied all that in, but we weren't. That was really fluky. Must do better. But there we go. We will. So yes. So lots coming up, lots going on, lots of opportunities to hear us wiffle waffle, but also to hear other experts. Which is always exciting. But that's probably enough for today, I think. Let's leave our lovely listeners to go and do whatever they're doing, whether it is running a marathon. Good luck to everybody running the London Marathon in a couple of weeks' time, I think it is. Or just juggling life, really. Next episode, we will be on with Nigel Taberner, so do listen to that as well. But yeah, for now, should we say bye-bye?
Bye-bye!
Bye-bye, everybody! Just before we say goodbye, I'd like to take this opportunity to say a huge thank you to Flank, our sponsor for the How to Thrive podcast. Without their support, it would be much, much harder for us to share the wonderful learnings from our guests. So thank you so much, Flank. And if you'd like to find out more about how they can support your legal operations, please go to getflank.ai. If you enjoyed the podcast, please check out our website at www.being-human.co.uk to find out how we can support you and your team to thrive.